Hello everyone, Beelzebub here again to talk about Super Sentai and Power Rangers. Now, both Super Sentai and Power Rangers were driven by the need to sell toys, and while the Zords were definitely the high-selling item, role-playing toys were also essential in allowing children to fantasize and immerse themselves in the world of the show. In both MMPR and Zyuranger, our heroes had to fight to earn their right to their weapons. So today, let's take a look at their journey. Part 1. Weapons equals teamwork. I guess. Part of what made Power Rangers popular with kids was the aesthetics. The suits, the Zords, and the weapons. As a kid, I had the Blade Blaster, which was an awesome toy. It was small, easy to carry around, and could transform between gun and blade mode, giving you a lot of versatility for whatever battle you were pretending to fight. The Blade Blasters aren't the iconic weapons from the show that everyone remembers, though. Each Ranger had an iconic weapon. Jason had a sword, Zack had an axe, Billy's weapon was the lance, Trini had daggers, and Kimberly sniped her enemies with a bow and arrow. The Rangers first get their weapons in the third episode of the series, Teamwork. Kimberly and Trini are trying to get petitions to clean up a dump site. The boys agree to sign the petition, but flake out when asked to accompany the girls to the dump site to deliver the petition in person. Bulk and Skull have their obligatory scene in which they temporarily turn into Captain Planet villains.
Recycle that.
Get a life, Bulk.
Hey, why don't you take this to the dump with you, Miss Clean?
With this giant land blaster, I'll be able to drill for oil anywhere!
Yeah, boys, yeah! Even in the wildlife sanctuary!
Trini and Kimberly go to the dump site alone and are ambushed by Goldar and Putties. So this is where the lesson in teamwork comes in. Everyone needs to be united or they will fall. Obviously, the boys are going to have to learn to put aside their personal wants for the needs of the group and the world, and... nope. Rita sends down a Minotaur, and instead of regrouping and fighting together, they fight as two separate groups. They have teleportation technology. Zordon could easily pull Kimberly and Trini out of the putty battle and have them help the others, but they can't because their actions have to match the raw Japanese footage. The Minotaur grows giant and the Rangers summon their Zords. Trini and Kimberly summon their Zords and make quick work of the putties and leave to join the others. This seems like a really good fighting strategy that they will never use again. The Zords come together to form the Dino Tank, which does its best to shoot the crap out of the monster. That doesn't work though, and the Rangers are called back to the command center for instructions. The Rangers are then given their power weapons. So Zordon is basically Tony Stark from Spider-Man Homecoming and just arbitrarily decides when the Rangers get their cool stuff without any real explanation. Jason then shows off his leadership skills by coming up with a genius plan.
Here's the plan. Corner the Minotaur and give him a taste of our weapons. If that doesn't work, we bring them together and give him a blast of our mega power. You with me?
Right, we're with you. All the way.
Yeah!
Hit him till he dies. That's the plan. The Rangers would not survive League of Legends. The Rangers beat the shit out of the Minotaur and combine their weapons to blow him up. The Rangers then go back to the school and help clean up a mess together, because the message of this episode was the power of teamwork, despite teamwork meaning very little in this episode. They didn't defeat the Minotaur with a brilliant strategy or the power of their friendship. They just used powerful weapons that the Minotaur wasn't built to counter. If there's a lesson in this episode, it's that if you encounter a problem and the current tool you have isn't enough to solve it, just get something bigger. Well, let's see what the Zyuranger episode is like. Part 2. Weapons and Courage. We begin the episode with the Zyurangers trying to train with broken weapons. Their gear got destroyed by the last monster they fought, Dora Skeleton. They decide they need better weapons, ones that can stand up to Pandora's monsters. They have the Ranger gun and sword, but those suck and don't look very cool. They look in their big-ass history book and find that there is an island with legendary weapons. Not only that, but the 5 weapons are exactly the right kinds of weapons that each member of the team needs. That's convenient. Imagine if the legendary weapons were just 5 sets of daggers. That'd be awkward. Boy's weapon sucks. The weapons are housed in a place called the Island of Despair. If you give in to sadness, you turn to stone. You also only have 1 day to retrieve the weapons before the island decides to just screw you and turn you to stone anyway. Bandora is aware of the Zyurangers' journey for the legendary weapons and traps a boy named Hiroshi and his mother on the island to distract the Zyurangers and keep them from being fully focused on their task. The Zyurangers separate into 2 groups. Boy and May go to find and help Hiroshi, while Dan, Geki, and Ghost try to find their way to the castle where the weapons are stored. Unfortunately for them, Dan sucks.
やめろんだ早く蜃気楼だうるせえ話せ水だ水だ
Billy was easily the most useful member of his team. His Japanese counterpart Dan is easily the most useless member of his team. So here's the Dan sucks meter. I'll probably be using that a lot as I continue to talk about Zyuranger. It's a completely original idea that I did not steal from anyone. Bandora also decides to throw a Minotaur their way to ensure their failure. May and Boy, meanwhile, are trying to help Hiroshi while fighting off Grifferzer, Goldar, and the Dora Golems. Holy shit! Fuck the weapons! They should just fight using these! I know exactly what to do. Bandora grows the Minotaur and the Zyurangers summon the Guardian Beasts to fight him. Now, the Zyurangers don't actually form their Megazord in this episode. That's not till episode 6. And this is actually the first time we've seen all the core dinosaur mecha. Tyranno shows up in an earlier episode and kills the Dora Titan, but yeah, this is the audience's first time seeing the Pteranodon, Triceratops, Mammoth, and Saber-toothed Tiger mecha, and their debut is pretty cool. Unfortunately, May and Boy are unable to prevent Hiroshi's despair from consuming him and turning him into stone. And it's on this depressing note that part 1 ends. Yep, this episode is a 2-parter. Most of the footage in this episode involves obviously Japanese people with very little action with the characters in costume, so it really was only enough usable footage for 1 episode of Power Rangers. As the second part begins, night falls and Bandora orders the Minotaur to retreat. Geki, Ghosh, and Dan do their best to keep warm, and Boy and May try to keep their spirits up despite failing to save Hiroshi. Day comes, and the Zyurangers have very little time before they are turned to stone. They eventually figure out how to enter the castle and find the last trial, an evil sword. Despite knowing that it's evil, Dan grabs it anyway. Geki decides to take on the burden of the evil sword, and with the help of his teammates, the sword is destroyed and the way to the weapons is revealed. Bandora shows up and uses her magic to freeze the Zyurangers in place. As their time runs out, they start to turn to stone. Why didn't Bandora just do this in the first place? She likes things to be needlessly complicated. In the 11th hour, Geki appeals to the weapons themselves to aid him and his friends against Bandora. Yes, Geki talks to weapons. Don't worry, Bandora comments on how stupid this is. But the ploy works. The weapons come to the Zyurangers and they are no longer being turned into stone. The Zyurangers then have their final battle with the Minotaur, which ends with them combining their weapons and killing it. Oh, also they conveniently found Hiroshi's mother randomly in the castle. It's not well explained. Bandora gets pissed and grows supersized and tries to destroy the island with her bare hands. And yes, this footage does get used in the Island of Illusion 2-parter later in Power Rangers. Why didn't Bandora just do this at the beginning? I prefer to keep my sanity and we'll just say that it's stupid. They come across the statue of Hiroshi while trying to escape and his mother weeps, her tears bringing him back to normal. Is it stupid and cliche? Yes. But a mother's bond with her child, as well as the power of her tears, is something that gets revisited later in the show, so it's kind of interesting for me to see it appear this early. They all narrowly escape Pandora blowing up the island, and they all go home and live happily ever after. Power Rangers was and is a shameless toy commercial. While using shows to sell toys to kids was popularized in the 80s with cartoons like Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, its practice continued into the 90s with shows like Street Sharks, Mighty Max, and of course Power Rangers. Super Sentai wasn't really any different, especially by the time we got to Zyuranger. At its core, Zyuranger wasn't really less driven by business than Power Rangers, but because it isn't made from footage of a different show, its themes and storylines are much more coherent. Honestly, the crew of Power Rangers made the best episode they could given the limited amount of footage they could actually use. It would have been nice, though, if they could have integrated the theme of teamwork a lot better into the episode's action sequences. The Zyuranger arc with the weapons ends up being better just because the themes of courage and never losing hope are integrated a lot more smoothly into the action sequences and the overall story. Well, that's all for now. Till next time.